Some betrayals happen in a blink of an eye, but the reason behind them is far darker than you think. It's not about love lost, weakness, or chance. Today, you'll discover the hidden psychology behind why people betray the ones they claim to love, and why it might hit closer to home than you ever imagined. Love is rarely as simple as it appears. Many people confuse attachment, habit, or comfort with true affection. They remain close, not because they feel a deep, enduring connection, but because it suits their life, keeps them safe, or avoids the discomfort of change when the balance of their needs shifts, when desire, fear, or opportunity takes precedence. The foundation of their commitment cracks. Betrayal is rarely a sudden act. It is the inevitable consequence of a relationship built on illusions rather than genuine emotional investment. Understanding this is painful, but it explains why those who seem closest to us can sometimes hurt us the most. Ego often rules the mind more than love. When pride, jealousy, or insecurity outweigh empathy, the person we trust may act in ways that seem unthinkable. They betray not out of malice alone, but because they are trying to protect their sense of self, to regain control, or to feel powerful in a world that makes them feel small. Human psychology shows that when individuals are driven by a fragile ego, they will often prioritize self-image over the feelings of others, leaving a trail of emotional damage in their wake. The more attached we are, the sharper the pain. Because betrayal is a weapon forged in someone's self-preservation, the desire for freedom is another silent motivator. Humans crave autonomy, and when obligations, emotions, or intimacy feel suffocating, the subconscious mind looks for escape. Betrayal can emerge as a way to reclaim control over one's life, even if it comes at the cost of trust or love. Psychologically, this is tied to the need for agency, a basic human drive to feel empowered in choices, relationships, and destiny. Those who betray often do not even fully understand why they are doing it. Their actions are a reflection of unmet personal needs, rather than a direct rejection of the other person. Selfishness, when normalized over time, becomes almost invisible. In a society that rewards personal gain and individual success, some people grow comfortable putting their own needs above those of others. Small compromises, little lies, and minor betrayals accumulate, creating a pattern that eventually explodes into something devastating. The mind can rationalize these choices as harmless, necessary, or even justified, while the emotional cost to loved ones is ignored. This is why betrayal often feels like a shock. It is the visible outcome of invisible, slowly growing self-interest. Fear of vulnerability shapes human behavior in ways we rarely admit. Intimacy, emotional exposure, and deep connection carry the risk of rejection and pain. Some individuals, unable to tolerate the anxiety of closeness, unconsciously push loved ones away through betrayal. It is a paradoxical act of self-protection. By hurting or deceiving someone first, they shield themselves from the possibility of being hurt. Understanding this does not excuse, but it explains the dark and complex psychology behind why someone who claims to love us can still break our trust. Ultimately, betrayal reveals the limitations, fears, and priorities of the betrayer. And confronting this reality is the first step toward protecting ourselves and navigating relationships with awareness. When ego takes over, it can blind a person to the feelings of those they claim to love. In relationships, empathy requires the ability to step outside oneself, to truly see and feel another person's perspective. But when pride, insecurity, or the need to feel superior dominate the mind, empathy withers. The person may know, on some level, that their actions hurt someone they care about, but their need to protect their self-image or assert dominance becomes stronger than any moral or emotional restraint. This is why betrayals often come from people who outwardly seem loving or loyal. They are caught between the truth of their emotions and the self-preserving illusions of their ego. Psychologically, this pattern is deeply rooted in human behavior. When individuals feel small, powerless, or envious, the ego interprets these feelings as threats to their identity. To compensate, the mind seeks control in any form, often at the expense of trust and closeness. The act of betrayal, whether through lies, deceit, or abandonment, becomes a misguided method of regaining a sense of power. It is not always conscious or premeditated. The brain is wired to avoid the discomfort of inadequacy, and hurting another person can feel, in that moment, like reclaiming stability or self-worth. This mechanism is reinforced over time because the mind craves patterns that reduce psychological discomfort. Every time someone uses betrayal as a defense, it reinforces the idea that control and ego protection are more important than empathy or connection. Slowly, this behavior becomes normalized, almost automatic. The person may even rationalize their choices, convincing themselves that their actions were necessary or justified. From the outside, it seems cruel and unpredictable. But from the psychological perspective of the betrayer, it is a survival tactic and instinctual response to emotional vulnerability. Betrayal often carries a heavy emotional cost for both parties. The betrayed person experiences shock, confusion, and a sense of profound injustice, because the behavior contradicts the love and trust they believed existed. Meanwhile, the betrayer may feel a fleeting sense of control or relief, but this is usually followed by guilt, shame, or anxiety. Psychologists describe this as cognitive dissonance, the mental tension that arises when one's actions conflict with their self-image. In the struggle to maintain ego over empathy, both individuals are trapped in a cycle of emotional pain and mistrust. Understanding betrayal can help us navigate relationships with clarity and self-protection. Recognizing that some people act out of self-preservation rather than malice does not excuse their behavior, but it illuminates the underlying motivations. It teaches us to differentiate between intentional cruelty and the defensive patterns of a fragile ego. Most importantly, it empowers us to set boundaries, recognize warning signs, and preserve our own emotional well-being in relationships where empathy is overpowered by ego. The harsh truth is that some people will betray those they love not because they stop caring, but because their fear of weakness and need for control outweighs any sense of moral responsibility. Some people betray not because they want to hurt others, but because they are chasing a sense of freedom they barely understand themselves. Human beings have an innate drive for autonomy, the feeling that we control our own lives and decisions. When obligations, routines, or the emotional demands of a close relationship feel constraining, the mind interprets this as a loss of personal power. Betrayal can emerge as a subconscious way to reclaim that sense of control, a way to step out from under responsibilities or emotional pressures that feel suffocating. It is rarely premeditated cruelty. It is a desperate, sometimes unconscious, bid to regain agency over their own life. Psychologists explain that this desire for freedom is rooted in both evolutionary and emotional needs. Autonomy has always been crucial for survival, enabling humans to make choices, explore opportunities, and avoid threats. In modern life, this drive often clashes with the intimacy and commitments that relationships demand. For someone who feels trapped or confined, betraying a loved one may provide a fleeting sense of release, a way to temporarily escape the perceived imprisonment of obligations and expectations. The act is less about the other person and more about satisfying the mind's urgent need to feel unrestricted. This hidden motivation can be deeply subconscious. Many people do not even recognize why they act the way they do until the damage is done. They may rationalize their choices with excuses about dissatisfaction, miscommunication, or unmet needs, without ever confronting the core impulse driving their behavior. The psychological tension comes from the collision between desire and guilt. They crave freedom, yet they know their actions are harming someone they claim to care about. This internal conflict often intensifies the betrayal, because the emotional weight of breaking trust collides with the thrill of momentary autonomy. The consequences of seeking freedom through betrayal are devastating, yet predictable. The person who betrays may feel a brief sense of relief or empowerment, as if they have reclaimed their independence, but it is almost always followed by guilt, shame, or anxiety. The betrayed individual experiences shock, heartbreak, and confusion, unable to reconcile the love they trusted with the choice that shattered it. Psychologists call this dynamic a tension between intrinsic desires and social bonds. The human need for self-determination conflicts with the equally strong need for connection, and betrayal becomes the tragic midpoint where these forces clash. Understanding the hidden desire for freedom does not excuse betrayal, but it explains why it happens and how it can feel so incomprehensible. Some people do not act out of malice or hatred. They act out of a fundamental need to assert control over their own lives, even at the cost of others' hearts. Recognizing this reality allows us to see betrayal through a psychological lens, rather than purely emotional pain, offering insight into human behavior that is uncomfortable, yet profoundly true. It teaches us that some people are willing to sacrifice trust and love to protect their sense of autonomy, and that awareness is the first step toward protecting ourselves, navigating relationships with clarity. In a world that constantly rewards personal gain, it is easy for people to slowly prioritize themselves over others without even realizing it. From childhood, we are taught to compete, to achieve, and to protect our own interests. And this can unintentionally normalize a mindset where self-interests outweighs empathy. When someone becomes accustomed to placing their needs first, even in small ways, it can quietly shape their perception of relationships. They begin to see compromise as optional, honesty as negotiable, and the feelings of others as secondary to their own desires. This gradual shift is almost invisible at first, but over time, it can fundamentally alter the way they treat those they claim to love. Psychologically, this behavior is tied to the brain's reward system. Every time someone acts selfishly and experiences a benefit, whether it's approval, success, or avoidance of discomfort, the brain associates self-interest with pleasure or survival. Small acts, like telling a harmless lie, keeping a secret, or prioritizing convenience over loyalty, become reinforced patterns. What starts as minor compromises of morality or trust can escalate, and the person may no longer even recognize that their behavior is harmful. They feel justified because it satisfies immediate needs. And this creates a dangerous feedback loop where selfishness becomes the default. Selfish choices, once normalized, erode the foundations of trust in any relationship. Trust relies on predictability, honesty, and mutual care. But when someone consistently prioritizes themselves, these pillars begin to crumble. Partners, friends, or family members may notice the subtle shifts, broken promises, concealed truths, or repeated self-serving actions, but it is often too late to prevent damage. Relationships do not break from a single act alone. They shatter because selfishness quietly accumulates, layer by layer, until loyalty, affection, and respect are no longer enough to hold them together. The emotional consequences for both parties are profound. The person who acts selfishly may initially feel satisfaction, relief, or a sense of control. But over time, guilt, anxiety, and cognitive dissonance emerge. They experience tension between their actions and their self-image as a good or loving person. For the betrayed, the experience is devastating. They're forced to reconcile the love they trusted with repeated evidence of disregard, creating confusion, heartbreak, and anger. Psychologists explain this as a clash between expectation and reality. One person's normalization of self-interest collides with another person's need for care and loyalty, producing intense emotional pain. Understanding the psychology behind normalized selfishness is crucial for protecting oneself. Recognizing the signs: subtle prioritization of self, small repeated lies, avoidance of responsibility, can prevent relationships from being blindsided by betrayal. It also reframes the experience, showing that the actions are not random or necessarily personal attacks, but reflections of ingrained behavioral patterns shaped by reward, habit, and fear of compromise. Accepting this reality allows us to set boundaries, make informed decisions about trust, and preserve our emotional well-being, even when others continue to put themselves first. True intimacy is one of the most profound human experiences, but it also carries a deep, often hidden risk. To truly connect with someone, we must reveal our fears, our flaws, and our deepest emotions. This level of openness can feel terrifying because it exposes us to the possibility of rejection, judgment, or pain. For some people, the idea of being emotionally naked is so threatening that they unconsciously seek ways to protect themselves. Betrayal becomes a defense mechanism, a method of creating distance before the vulnerability can overwhelm them, even if it comes at the expense of those they claim to love. Psychologically, this behavior is rooted in self-preservation. Humans are wired to avoid pain, and emotional exposure triggers a primitive fear response. Similar to physical danger, when someone senses that intimacy might leave them defenseless, the mind can rationalize harmful actions. Deception, manipulation, or emotional withdrawal is necessary for survival. In this way, Betrayal is not always a conscious act of cruelty, but a protective reflex, an attempt to maintain control over one's emotional landscape. The fear of being hurt becomes stronger than the desire to maintain trust, and the very act of closeness is reframed as a potential threat rather than an opportunity for love. The paradox of vulnerability is that those who fear it most often crave connection the most. The internal conflict is intense. They want closeness and love, yet they are terrified of the risks it carries. This tension can manifest in subtle ways, such as withholding feelings, breaking promises, or creating emotional distance. Over time, these small protective acts can escalate into outright betrayal, leaving loved ones confused and devastated. Psychologists call this a defensive pattern, where the avoidance of emotional pain unintentionally becomes a source of pain for others, reinforcing cycles of mistrust and fear. The emotional consequences of vulnerability-based betrayal are profound for both parties. The person who betrays may feel temporary relief, as if they have shielded themselves from harm, but this relief is often short-lived. Guilt, shame, and anxiety emerge, because their actions conflict with their self-image as someone who loves and cares. For the betrayed, the pain is far deeper. They experience a sense of incomprehensible loss, struggling to reconcile the love they felt with the choice that caused betrayal. This dynamic illustrates a tragic truth. Fear of vulnerability can destroy what people hold most dear, even when the underlying intention is self-preservation. Understanding the role of vulnerability in betrayal allows us to see human behavior more clearly. It shows that not all acts of hurt come from malice. Some stem from fear, survival instincts, and unhealed emotional wounds. Recognizing this reality does not excuse the pain inflicted, but it provides insight into why it happens and how it might be prevented in future relationships. Awareness empowers us to protect ourselves, set healthy boundaries, and approach intimacy with caution, while still appreciating the profound value of emotional connection. The harsh truth is that vulnerability is necessary for love, yet it will always carry risk, and some people, driven by fear, will betray to avoid facing it. Betrayal is often misunderstood because we instinctively focus on our own pain and the immediate damage done. We feel shocked, angry, and confused, trying to make sense of why someone we trusted could hurt us so deeply. Yet, if we look beyond the surface, betrayal serves as a revealing lens. It reflects the inner world of the person who committed it. Their actions are not only a response to circumstances, but also a window into their fears, desires, insecurities, and moral limitations. Every lie, every act of disloyalty, and every hidden choice exposes truths about the betrayer that they may not even fully recognize themselves psychologically. This is because human behavior is rarely random. Our actions are guided by deep-seated motivations, many of which are subconscious. Betrayal often stems from unmet emotional needs, unresolved fears, or unhealed wounds. When someone breaks trust, it signals what they are unwilling or unable to face within themselves. It could be a fear of vulnerability, a need for control, or a craving for freedom at the expense of others. Observing betrayal in this way reframes it not as a meaningless act of cruelty, but as a mirror reflecting the psychological struggles of the person who chose it. The mirror of betrayal also reveals patterns that might otherwise go unnoticed. People rarely betray out of a single moment of weakness. It is usually the culmination of habits, choices, and repeated compromises. Psychologists note that repeated betrayals are often linked to persistent personality traits or coping mechanisms, such as selfishness, fear of intimacy, or unresolved trauma. Understanding these patterns allows us to see that the act of betrayal is less about the other person's worthiness or our own failings, and more about the inner limitations and choices of the one who betrays. It exposes a consistent map of their psyche in the form of behavior. This insight, however, comes with a difficult truth. Seeing betrayal as a mirror does not lessen the pain or excuse the act. Even if it reveals the betrayer's struggles, the consequences for the betrayed are very real. Trust is shattered, relationships are damaged, and emotional wounds linger. Yet, recognizing the reflection allows us to separate our own self-worth from their actions. It shows that their ability to betray exists even in the presence of love, highlighting that the capacity to hurt is often rooted in their own fears, desires, and unresolved conflicts rather than anything inherently lacking in the person who is betrayed. Ultimately, betrayal as a mirror is both harsh and enlightening. It forces us to confront the uncomfortable reality that people are capable of actions we cannot control, even when feelings of love are present. By understanding the psychological truths behind their behavior, we gain clarity, not just about them, but about the nature of human relationships. It teaches us to observe, protect ourselves, and respond with awareness rather than blind emotion. Betrayal may leave scars, but it also illuminates a deeper reality. The reflection of their choices is a guide to understanding human nature, human weakness, and the boundaries we must honor to safeguard our own hearts. So, what do you do when the one you trusted the most betrays you? You don't ignore it. You don't pretend it's not real. You learn, you protect your heart, and most importantly, you recognize the truth about human nature. Betrayal is painful, yes, but understanding it is the first step to never being blindsided again. If this made you question someone in your life, or even yourself, share this video with someone who needs to see it. And remember, love wisely, trust carefully, and never let the darkness of others define your light.